Okay, Assalamualaikum and hello to everybody. Okay, so welcome back to our organizational behavior course. I'm Dr. Ain, and today we will continue with chapter 5, leadership and followership, focusing on part 2 of this chapter. So for this recorded session, we will look at one of the most practical perspectives on leadership, which is the contingency theories. Okay, so these theories are specifically useful because they recognize that there is no one single approach to leadership. Instead, effective leadership depends on the situation. Okay, so by the end of this session, you should be able to describe and compare the four major contingency theories of leadership. Okay, so without further ado, let's move to the first contingency theory, which is by Fiedler. Okay, so Fiedler's contingency theories is one of the earliest and most well-known contingency models of leadership. Okay, so for this theory, Fiedler argued that team effectiveness at the workplace is determined by the fit between a leader's need structure and how favorable the situation is. And in other words, it's not just about who the leader is or how skilled they are, but it is also about whether the situation suits with their leadership style. Okay, so how does Fiedler determine a leader style? Okay, so Fiedler used something called as the least preferred co-worker skill, or the LPC skill. Okay, so here's how this skill works, right? So leaders are asked to think of the person they have least enjoyed working with, someone they might consider difficult, uncooperative, or frustrating. Okay, then they rate that person using a series of adjectives like friendly, unfriendly, helpful to unhelpful, and etc. If a leader gives their least preferred coworker a high rating, this means they still see some positives in that person. So these are called high LPC leaders, and they tend to be relationship oriented because they are comfortable with that particular individual. Oppositely, if the leader gives a low rating LPC skill, it means they see their least preferred co-worker in a very negative light. So these are low LPC leaders who are typically more task-oriented, which could be the best style that could be used for that particular individual. So Fiedler believed that leaders naturally fall into one of these two categories, relationship oriented or task oriented, and that this style is relatively fixed. Okay, so what about the situation? Okay, so this will be explained detail later on, but let me explain a bit about this relation to the situation. Fiedler identified three key factors that can determine how favorable a situation is for a leader. The first one is leader-member relations. How much trust and respect does the leader have from their team? And then the second one, task structure. Is the task clear and well-defined, or is it unclear or unstructured? And the third one is the position power. Does the leader have formal authority or position and power over rewards and punishments? So these factors combine to create 8 possible situations ranging from very favorable to very unfavorable. Okay, so who succeeds in what situation? So now here's the interesting part. Low LPC or task-oriented leaders are most effective in situations that are very favorable and very unfavorable. But high LPC or relationship-oriented leaders do best in situations that are moderately favorable. Why? Because when the situation is very structured and under control, task-oriented leaders can push for high performance. But when the situation is chaotic, task-oriented leaders can provide direction and structure. Okay? But in moderately favorable situations, where the task is not too hard, but the relationships are a bit shaky, relationship building becomes important. And that's where high LPC leaders shine. Okay, so high LPC refer to relationship-oriented leaders. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, with more in detail about Fiedler's contingency theory based on the 3 dimensions that I've explained just now. Right? So again, situation is specifically referred to the 3 situational dimensions that influence a leader's effectiveness. Okay, so Fiedler believed that the success of a leader does not solely depend on their personality or leadership style, but it also depends on how well the situation around them supports or challenges them. So there are again 3 main dimensions that define the situation. Okay, the first one that I explained previously, task structure. So this first dimension refers to the degree of clarity or ambiguity in the task that the group needs to complete. Okay, so ask yourself, is the task straightforward and routine, or is it vague and creative? So when the task is structured, it means there are clear goals and procedures. Everyone knows what is expected of them. The steps to complete the task are also well defined, and the performance can be measured easily. So this creates a favorable situation for the leader because there is less confusion and more control. Okay, but then when the task is unstructured, it means there's a lot of uncertainty. Okay, and there are no fixed guidelines or procedure, and the team may need to use creativity or judgment, and it's harder to evaluate success. So this kind of situation is less favorable because it adds complexity and uncertainty, unclear. Okay, so that makes it harder for a leader to manage the team effectively because of this unclear structure. Okay, so for example, a team of assembly line workers following a step-by-step process. So this is structure, task. And then a second example could be a group of marketing executives brainstorming a new campaign from scratch. So this is the example of unstructured task. All right, the next leader situation or the dimensions is position power. Position power refers to the formal authority or position a leader has due to their role or title within the organization. Okay, so it can answer the question like how much power does the leader have to reward, punish, or influence the behavior? If the leader has strong position power, it means they can hire, they can fire, promote, or discipline their employees. They also can control access to resources or privileges, and their instructions carry weight because of their role. So this creates a favorable situation because the leader has the leverage and can use formal authority to influence the behavior. But if the leader has weak position power, they may be in a more advisory role. Okay, they might not have real authority over decisions. They have to rely more on persuasion than on position. So this makes the situation less favorable because the leader's ability to control outcomes is limited. Okay, so for example, a department manager with the authority to approve bonuses. So this is a strong position power. Another example of weak position power is when a project coordinator without hiring or budget control. Right. Okay, so lastly, we have leader-member relations. So this is probably the most important of the three dimensions. It refers to the quality of the interpersonal relationships between the leader and the members of the group. Okay, so are the relationships built on trust, respect, and cooperation? Or is there tension, mistrust, or conflict? So if the leader-member relations are good, it means the team trusts and respects the leader. Communication is open and positive, and there is a strong sense of team cohesion. So this makes the situation highly favorable because the leader has support from the team. But if the relations are poor, then there may be a resistance or even sabotage. Okay, communication may break down or the conflict may affect the team performance. So this can create an unfavorable situation, no matter how good the leader's style is. Right. So a leader who is respected and well liked by their team is the example of good leader-member relations. But for a leader who faces gossip, passive resistance, or open challenges, this is equal or similar to, poor leader-member relations. So these three dimensions, task structure, position power, and leader-member relations are used by Fiedler to assess how favorable or unfavorable a leadership situation is. So the more favorable the situation, according to the structured task, strong power, and good relations, the more control the leader has. So according to Fiedler, low LPC leaders or task-oriented leaders do best in situations of high control and or low control. And high LPC leaders who are claimed to be relationship-oriented are more effective in situations of moderate control, where the interpersonal skills are especially valuable. So why is this important? This is important because it can help the organizations to place leaders in the right roles. So instead of expecting leaders to change their personality, organizations can adjust the situation. For example, by providing more support, clarifying tasks, or enhancing the leader's authority. So this strategic movement between the leader and the situation is what makes leadership effective in real world context. Alright, so now let's move on to the second major contingency theory of leadership, which is the path goal theory of leadership that is developed by Robert House in the 1970s. So if you remember Fiedler's theory just now, it emphasized that a leader's style is fixed, and the key to effectiveness is matching the leader with the right situation. But what if a leader could adapt their style based on what their team needs? So that's exactly what the path goal theory is about. The main concept behind the path goal theory is this. A leader's job is to clear the path for the subordinates to achieve their goals by providing direction, support, and removing the obstacles. In simpler terms, the leader helps the team get from where they are now to where they need to be. Alright? Okay, so according to this theory, leaders are not stuck with one style. Instead, they must adapt their leadership behavior depending on the characteristics of the followers and the nature of the task or work environment. So it's all about being flexible and responsive. Effective leaders tend to understand what their team members need and can adjust their leadership approach to motivate and enable success and align the team goals with organizational goals. Okay, so basically, there are 4 leadership styles under this path goal theory. A leader can switch between these styles depending on the situation. Okay, the first one is directive leadership. Directive leader gives clear instructions, sets expectations, and schedules work. Directive leadership is useful when the tasks are unstructured and ambiguous, because the team members will know exactly what to do and how to do it. Okay, so for example, a new employee is not sure how to start a report. So the leaders may use a step-by-step breakdown. All right. The second leadership styles for this theory is supportive leadership. Supportive leader shows concern for the well-being and the needs of the team members. It can create a friendly and approachable atmosphere, especially useful when the task is stressful and monotonous. Okay, so for example, a leader notices that the team is overwhelmed and stressed. So they provide emotional support and encouragement to reduce the pressure. And the third one is participative leadership, whereby the leader involves teams members in decision making. Participative leadership is useful when the team members are experienced, capable, and want a sense of ownership, because it can build commitment and motivation. Okay, so for example, before launching a new project, the leader may ask the team for input on how to approach the strategy. And the last one is achievement-oriented leadership style. Achievement-oriented leaders sets challenging goals and expects high performance because they want to show their confidence in the team's abilities. Achievement-oriented leadership can encourage the continuous improvement and excellence among the team members. Okay, so for example, a leader encourages their high-performing sales team to beat the last quarter's record and provides incentives to motivate them. That is the example of achievement-oriented leadership. Okay, so now how does the leader know which style to use? Okay, so they must consider first is the follower characteristics and the work environment. Okay, for example, in terms of follower characteristics, such as the team members confident, okay, the ability level, experience or independent. If yes, they may prefer participative or achievement-oriented leadership. If not, then they might need directive or supportive guidance. Okay, and then the next one is work environment or workplace characteristics. Okay, so is the task repetitive and boring? Then it can be applied a supportive leadership style. If the task is unclear and complex, then the leader can use directive leadership styles. And if the tasks are challenging but the team is capable, then the leaders can use achievement-oriented leadership. So this matching process can help to maximize the motivation, satisfaction, and performance. So why is path goal theory is useful? Unlike Fiedler's model, which assumes that leadership style is fixed, path goal theory encourages the leaders to be dynamic and adaptable because it focuses on how leaders influence the motivation by emphasizing to remove the obstacles to performance. So this theory works well in diverse teams and changing environments, especially where the leaders need to constantly adjust to meet employee needs. Okay, so path goal theory is about a leaders that helps the followers by clearing the path to success. It promotes the flexibility as the leaders must adapt their behavior to the task and the followers' needs. So again, there are four styles: directive, supportive, participative, and achievement-oriented. And the right leadership behavior depends on both the followers' characteristics and the workplace characteristics. Right. Okay, so now we will move to another contingency theory. So far, we have looked at two contingency theory previously, okay, which are Fiedler's and also path goal theory. Okay, so now let's move to another contingency theory. Okay, that focuses not on general leadership styles or motivation, but on how leaders make decisions and how much participation they allow from followers. So this is the Vroom-Yetton-Jago normative decision model, which is a theory developed to help the leaders to choose the most appropriate level of involvement when making decisions. Okay, so the core idea of the model is that is about the decision-making effectiveness. Okay, this model argues that no single decision-making style is best in all situations. So the leader's job is to choose the right level of participation, ranging from making the decision alone to involving the whole team, depending on the situation. This model provides a structured, step-by-step approach that can help the leaders to determine who should be involved in a decision, how much input should others have, and what decision style will lead to the best quality decision and the highest commitment. Okay, so basically there are five forms of decision-making styles proposed by Vroom-Yetton-Jago model, okay, that fall on a spectrum from autocratic to collaborative. Okay, so let's go through each one. Okay, so the first one is autocratic type 1. Okay, so autocratic type 1. is that when the leader makes the decision alone using available information. So there's no input from the team members and useful for simple decisions or emergencies. Okay, for example, a factory manager decides to shut down a faulty machine immediately because of the safety reason. Okay, the second one is autocratic type 2. Okay, right? So autocratic type 2 is when the leader gathers information from team members but makes the decision alone. Okay, the team input is used only to inform the leader's judgment, not to make the decision. Okay, for example, a project leader asks each team member for data on their task, but then finalizes the budget alone. Okay, and then the next one is consultative type 1. Okay, consult individually. All right, the leader shares the issue one-on-one with relevant team members to gather their opinions, but still makes the decision alone. Okay, for example, a supervisor speaks privately with several team members about potential schedule changes before choosing the new shift pattern. Okay, and then the fourth one is consultative type 2. Okay, so the leader meets with the group collectively to discuss the problem and gather the input, but ultimately decides alone. Okay, a team meeting is held to discuss ideas for a new marketing campaign, but the manager selects the final concept independently. That is the example of consultative type 2. Consult group. And the last one is group-based, okay, collaborative, where the leader and the team make the decision together. Okay, so the leader acts as a facilitator, okay, and allows the group to decide by consensus or majority vote. Okay, for example, a committee collectively choose the new employee benefits policy after open discussion. Okay, so how does a leader choose the right style? Okay, to help leaders choose the most appropriate decision style, the model presents a decision tree or flow chart based on the 7 situational factors, okay, such as decision significance, importance of commitment, the leader's expertise, likelihood of the team commitment, will the team support a solo decision, okay, time constraints, team alignment, group expertise. So there are all the examples of, the questions, okay, that might be take into consideration when choosing the right decision style. Okay, so why is this model important? Because it can help the leaders to make efficient and effective decisions. So not every time using the single one decision making style, but it depends on the urgency of the situation, right? Okay, so now let's move to the last contingency theory for this chapter, which is situational leadership model that is developed by Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard. Okay, so this model is especially popular in the business world because of its practical and easy to understand approach. Okay, so the main idea of this model is simple but powerful. Okay, as the most effective leadership styles depends on the readiness or maturity of the followers. So rather than assuming one best way to lead, Hersey and Blanchard argued that effective leaders must adapt their style based on the development level of their team members. So based on this model, there are two key factors, okay, which are the leadership style, okay, what the leader does, and the follower readiness, what the follower is capable of. Okay, right. So the first one is the leadership style. Okay, so the leadership styles is referred to the 4 leadership styles, okay, based on the degree of directive behavior, task focus, and supportive behavior, okay, relationship focus. Okay, so S1 is referred to telling or directing. Okay, telling or directing. Okay, it is referred to high directive but low supportive. Okay, so the leader gives clear instructions and closely supervises the performance. So telling or directing is best for followers who are inexperienced or insecure. Okay, for example, a new intern that needs a detailed guidance on how to complete their first work assignment. Okay, and then the second one is selling or coaching. Okay, so this includes high directive and high supportive. Okay, so leader may explain the decisions, provides encouragement, and seeks input. Okay, so this is suitable for followers who are willing but lack ability. Okay, so for example, a new team member which is very, um, energetic, okay, but still learning the ropes. Okay, they need guidance and motivation. Okay, and the third one is participating or supporting. Okay, it may need low directive and high supportive. You can refer to the task behaviors and relationship behaviors there. Okay, directive refer to the task behaviors, supportive is relationship behaviors. Okay, so for participating, leader may help or assist in decision making and encourages the collaboration. So it is best for followers who are capable but lacking confidence or motivation. Okay, for example, an experienced employee that is capable but disengaged. So the leaders can support and helps rebuild the morale. All right. And then the last one is delegating. Okay, low directive and low supportive. Low task behaviors and low relationship behaviors. Okay, so here leader turns over responsibility for decisions and implementation, referred to maybe empowerment. Okay, so it is ideal for followers who are both competent and confident. Okay, for example, a seasoned staff member that leads a project independently with minimal supervision. Okay, so Hersey and Blanchard also describe 4 levels of readiness, okay, among followers, okay, known as D1 to D4. Okay, it may not be explained here, okay, but we will explain in detail in our live class later on. All right, so D1 is referred to low competence and high commitment. Okay, to D4, high competence to high commitment. So the leader's job is to match their style. Okay, S1 to S4 to D1 to D4 based on the followers development model. Right? So this model is useful because it is highly flexible that can encourage the leader to switch styles based on followers' needs. Right? And it is also can be applied in coaching, mentoring, and team management situations. So later on in our live class, okay, I will provide you with the example of S1 to S4 and D1 to D4 for followers level for you to uh, get the ideas into the situational leadership model. Right? Okay, so now let's move to another learning outcome for this chapter, which is about discussing the recent developments in leadership theory of leader-member exchange and inspirational leadership. Okay, right. Okay, so what is leader member exchange theory, or in other terms, it is popularly known as LMX. LMX theory. Okay, so LMX theory suggests that leaders don't treat all subordinates or the employees the same. Instead, they form unique relationships with each team member. And the quality of these relationships can impact motivation, performance, and satisfaction. Right? So LMX focuses on the differentiated treatment leaders give to individuals in their team. Okay, so basically, LMX theory explains that leaders typically develop two types of relationships with the workers, which is in-group members or as out-group members. In-group members is when these are the team members with high quality exchanges. Okay, they usually receive more attention, trust, support, and decision making opportunities. Okay, so the relationship is built on mutual respect, loyalty, and trust. And in group members tend to be more motivated and committed to the team. Okay, so for example, a team leader that regularly checks in with the senior team member, okay, values their opinions in meetings and assigns them to challenging tasks with more autonomy. Okay, but outgroup member is when the members have low quality exchanges with the leader. So the relationship is more formal, okay, based strictly on job requirements. They could also have less involvement, fewer growth opportunities, and lower trust. Okay, outgroup members usually feel disengaged or undervalued. Okay, so a leader only communicates with some team members through formal updates and does not seek their input on important decision. That is the example of uh, situation for LMX theory. All right, so today I think there's more in your head to uh, grasp about our today's lecture. Okay, so basically we already explored the uh, four contingency theories in the beginning, okay, which are Fiedler's, okay, path goal, situational, and also room, okay, theory. All right. So we can see the flexibility and adaptability are key for leaders in different situation or context. Okay, so in our next lecture later on, okay, we will explore more into the concept of followership, okay, to explore the important role that the followers play in the leadership process. And we will also open for discussion for what we have learned today. Okay, so with that, I thank you for your attention. Okay, see you next time. Thank you very much.